Coming to you from the 2024 National Planning Conference, this is GovLove, a podcast about local government. GovLove is produced by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. We engage the brightest minds in local government. I'm Dan Bolin, a local government attorney and partner at the Anslick Law Firm in Chicago. Today is a very special episode because we're online at the National Planning Conference for award-winning planners. Each year, APA's National Planning Awards honor planning efforts, initiatives, and individuals working to make safer, stronger, and more just communities for all. This year, APA honored the Charlotte 2040 Comprehensive Plan with the Daniel Burnham Award. Our Legacy, Our Community, a renewed vision for North Tulsa, was honored with the Advancing Diversity and Social Change Award. Kauai, Hawaii, their sea level rise constraint district, was awarded with the Resilience and Sustainability Award, and the City of Detroit's Cody, Rouge, and Warrendale Youth-Centric Neighborhood Framework with the Planning Excellence Award. And today we are joined by Dave Walker, the Design Director for the West District of the City of Detroit, to talk about his career in planning and this award-winning plan. Dave, welcome to GovLove.
Hey, hello, Daniel, and hello, everybody, for the APA Conference NCP 24. Thank you for your time, and I'd love to tell you about whatever you want to know.
Oh, whatever. This is going to be a broad, free-ranging, freewheeling conversation. I'm excited about it. We're also joined by our online National Planning Conference audience. Please drop your questions in the chat, and we'll try to address some of those later. But first, let's get started with our signature lightning round. Dave, please tell me about your career path. Maybe start with the day you were born.
It's funny. I can do it really quickly. So I was born in London, UK, to
Wow.
Jamaican parents who met there in London. Lived in London for 3 to 5 years, moved to Chicago, a little area called Peoria, Illinois, just south of Chicago. Grew up there before going to college at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, Fighting Illini.
Yeah.
Got my bachelor's degree in urban planning and public policy from the University of Illinois. And then I went on to get my master's degree in urban planning and public policy at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And there I got a chance to work for the Great Cities Initiative. And I became one of the youngest executive directors of a nonprofit community development corporation at the Near West Side CDC. And I ran the Near West Side CDC from the age of 25 to the age of 28 before going back to school and getting a master's degree in architecture at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And from there, I interned for Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, one of the largest international architecture firms in the world, and then worked for SOM for almost 8 years, working in high-end urban design, large-scale city planning, and large-scale architecture projects. And so that was my career path. And then from there, really kind of being in my own practice for almost 10 years, doing architecture and urban design under the name of Walk Studio LLC. And then I got recruited by a very aggressive planning director here in the city of Detroit by the name of Maurice Cox. And Maurice Cox said, "Hey, Dave, we've got something really interesting going on here. We've got a new mayor, Mayor Michael Duggan, and he's really trying to rebuild the city of Detroit." This was in 2016. So I said, wow, this sounds interesting. This is my career path. This is kind of what I wanted to do because I've never got a chance to work in the public sector. It's been private sector all of my life or nonprofit. So I said, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to understand the public sector, to work in the public sector, but also to be able to be in a mission-driven initiative to help rebuild the city of Detroit. And so then that's why I took the position, and I've been here since 2017.
Wow, that's outstanding. I'm a Fighting Illini football season ticket holder. Very proud of the Fighting Illini men's basketball team for their Elite Eight run. Very proud of the women's team that won their postseason tournament. Just a great time to be a Fighting Illini fan. And that actually, that is not the main reason we had you on. Maybe tell me some more about some of the projects you worked on in Chicago at SOM. What were some of your favorite
Oh
projects you
my
worked
God.
on?
So it's interesting because SOM, we got a chance to work on a lot of award-winning projects. So I think some of my favorites, we did a downtown master plan for the city of Chicago. I think another great project was an international project that we did as part of this whole initiative where we designed 8 new cities within this large island called Chongming Island. So this was a wonderful project, which we won an Urban Design Award with the AIA, as well as an Urban Design Award for the downtown Detroit master plan. We did a master plan for the entire country of Qatar, working with there. So that was very interesting for us to do. I got a chance to work on that. So just a lot of large scale international projects. I mean, everything there was a major issue in the world in some form or fashion, our name would come up to try to help solve urban design and planning issues, as well as signature architecture buildings, such as the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. While I was at SOM, we got a chance to work on that. And then just a number of large scale projects that we have done. I think one of the nice ones locally is working on the Lakeshore East master plan. At a certain point, you had this area right next to the river, right next to Lake Michigan, that was just vacant. And back then, it was just utilized as a golf um, a golf training center. So there was like a golf range there, and it's the weirdest thing. And so then the developer came by, Magellan Development Group. They said, hey, we got to get this thing developed. And now when you go down there, we started off with a 5-acre park, and now the Aqua Tower is there. There's so much stuff there now. It's just so funny seeing it. As well as Millennium Park, when we did a master plan for Millennium Park, when there was nothing there, and then
Yeah.
SOM hired to do that master plan and then see that grow. So for us working for an international firm like that, a large firm, and seeing vacant land, which is portions of Grant Park, and then doing a master plan and seeing what everybody sees now, which is um, Millennium Park, and then seeing all this vacant land, which was at that point just a golf range, right at the intersection of the Lake Michigan and the river, and turning that into one of the most kind of desired locations in downtown Chicago has just been was absolutely fun, just amazingly fun. So yep, that was the great experiences that I've
No, wow. I could go there all the time. Thank you for doing that.
had.
The You had your own firm for a bit. What kind of work did you do there, and what were some of your favorite projects there?
Yeah, so some of my favorite projects when I had my own private practice is still doing some planning. So we did kind of a master plan, urban design plan for the near north neighborhood in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I got a chance to work with the University of Chicago and the Southeast Chicago Commission, SEC, working with them on just some small neighborhood plans to kind of really help the neighborhood surrounding the University of Chicago and Hyde Park, and little neighborhoods or little projects there. And then just working with the city of Chicago when they had their parklet initiative, designing parklets to get some of our streets a little bit more active and active on our corridors. And got a chance to work with the city of Chicago a lot on designing and kind of implementing this whole parklet scenario where you're taking parking spots on commercial corridors and creating active spaces for them. So that was fun as well. But once again, just tons, and I could go on for hours talking about my experiences with all those things. But yeah, no, it's been just, I've had a pretty fun career. I've been exposed to a lot of things.
We could talk for hours, but I don't know if I don't know if the APA staff will stick around that long. But the poor tech people probably need to get lunch. But the in any event, you went to the city of Detroit. But what was your first role there? Some of your favorite projects there? Well, obviously talk about the this neat plan. But what else did you do in
You
at
know,
the city?
yep. So I'll give kudos to Maurice Cox and Janet Deterian, who both recruited me here to the city of Detroit and told me about kind of what was happening. At that point, Mayor Duggan had come into the system, and a lot of things weren't working. The lights, street cleanup. He was trying to get the basic things set up so the city started to work again. But in that same process, he said, "Hey guys, I need a vision to start growing my neighborhoods." At that point, we had a billionaire by the name of Dan Gilbert, who had purchased a number of properties in downtown. And we knew that downtown was going to grow because Dan owned these buildings and he was going to make it happen. He established a company called Bedrock, and they're doing wonderful things in downtown Detroit. And you can see a lot of that as part of the NFL draft. You got a glimpse of kind of the power of what's happening in downtown. So downtown is developing. But then the mayor said, "Hey, you know what? I want to make sure that we have a focus on our neighborhoods as well." That's the thing that excited me the most. And that's why I moved here to work with the planning department, is really to kind of help do these plans, working on these neighborhoods. The way that we did that is we kind of did an outreach to the corporate sector and the nonprofit sector, and we called what's called the Strategic Neighborhood Fund. With the S&F Fund, and the public and private sectors such as Penske and Blue Cross Blue Shield and Huntington Bank and Flagstar, we got all these different types of corporations to chip in large amounts of money. And chipping in large amounts of money with the public sector, with the bonding that we did with the federal government, we were able to institute what's called the Strategic Neighborhood Fund, and then do these framework plans to understand how investment was going to happen there. Oh, I'm sorry. And Invest Detroit was a large player in that with us as well. And so what we've done is we've planned almost, I want to say 12 different S&F areas, which incorporates almost 90 different neighborhoods that are outside the downtown. And Warrendale Cody Rouge, which incorporates Warrendale Cody Rouge S&F plan area, incorporates about 6 different neighborhoods. And that was like one of the fourth ones that we did out the box. So that's been one of the exciting things working on in the city of Detroit, is the whole strategic neighborhood fund strategy, working with philanthropy, the public sector, the federal government, obviously city and state government, to really implement a plan of growth for the neighborhoods, with the ultimate goal of serving the existing residents as best as we can, giving them a viable neighborhood to have, but also trying to attract new residents to increase the population in the city of Detroit, which right now hovers at about 650 or 680,000.
Well, very cool. Uh, real focus on neighborhoods. We're going to be talking about a neighborhood today. That's the end of our lightning round. You have a perfect score. We now get to dive into the main focus of our conversation. Maybe let's set the scene. Like, where is the West District in the city of Detroit, where your role focuses, and where's the Cody Rouge and Warrendale neighborhood?
Yeah, so the West District, I always tell people, the city of Detroit is large. The city of Detroit was built for a population of about 3 million, and it makes sense. The big three are here: Ford, Chrysler, GM. So in the history of this city growing, they said, "Hey, you know what? As a company, as companies, we want to make sure that we have a single family home and a 2-car garage for every employee that we have." And so then the city was based on that kind of a mentality. And but obviously over time, I think at the height in 1950, we reached a a 1.5 million people population, but now that has shrunk over time to 680,000. And so then the West District really incorporates all these neighborhoods kind of west of Woodward. Woodward is this major spine that we have that goes downtown from the river all the way up through the northern suburbs of the city of Detroit in Southeast Michigan. And the West District incorporates, I want to say, almost 70 different neighborhoods. Some of the most beautiful ones, such as Palmer Woods, University District, Sherwood Forest, Grandmont, Rosedale Park, you name it. Some of the most beautiful neighborhoods in the city of Detroit, Boston Edison. Um, and so then with that, working through all those neighborhoods, we just took like maybe 4 or 5 of them, and we put a little boundary around them. Some of the most viable neighborhoods, some of the neighborhoods that had the most existing population that has stayed throughout time, and had some commercial corridors that had the opportunity to really help these neighborhoods thrive. We focused the S&F strategy on those neighborhoods, and Warrendale Cody Rouge is one of those neighborhoods. Or I'm sorry, is one of those S&F areas that incorporates 5 neighborhoods.
Oh, very good. And so I guess let's just get into it. Why did the city decide to undertake this plan for this neighborhood?
So it was interesting because this neighborhood in particular, Warrendale, Cody, Rouge, which incorporates the neighborhoods of Warrendale, Franklin Park, Garden View, and what and Cody Rouge. And what we noticed is when we look at the stats, it had the second highest percentage of youth in the city of Detroit. That really interested us. It's like, well, wait a second. Under 18, this is the second highest population, this area in the city of Detroit. Let's figure out what we can do over here. They also had some stable neighborhoods with people who had been here for a while. They had some neighborhoods that were appreciating. They had some schools, obviously. The schools here, Cody High School being the largest. And within that process of taking a look at it, it just made sense for us to do an S&F area over here in the Warrendale Cody Rouge area.
So who was responsible for undertaking this plan?
So what we typically do for our S&F strategies or S&F areas, strategic neighborhood fund areas, is the planning department sits there and says, hey, you know what? We can't manage and do these plans all by ourselves. We need a partner. So we go and put an RFP out for a consultant and we hire a consultant. All the different framework areas have a different consultant that kind of help and support the planning department for the city of Detroit. They're like our kind of graphic help. They help us understand neighborhood. They help us understand ideas. For Warrendale Cody Rouge, we were able to hire through a very kind of process. We were able to hire Hector out of New Jersey, and we really liked their proposal. We really liked their interview. We had some youth on the panel who actually chose Hector as well. And Damon Rich and Jay Shin are the out of New Jersey are the kind of partners in charge of Hector. And Damon Rich is somebody who has won a MacArthur Genius Award because of his work with youth in the built environment. So we knew that in picking Hector, that we would pick a group that would really understand how to incorporate youth into a planning process.
Oh, interesting. What advice do you have for folks that might be putting together a team for a plan in their community like this? What did you learn from that RFP process?
Yeah, we learned a lot. We had some of the top firms in the nation and internationally who wanted to do a plan like this because as we promoted in the RFP, we wanted a child-centered focused master plan with youth involved in the planning process. So that was in the RFP. And so then all these consultants knew that and they said, hey, we can do this. We would love to do this. So everybody was excited. We had eventually got about 20 submissions from different companies around the world. And then we shortlisted it to 5. And then those 5 had to do an interview in Cody High School in a very hot auditorium room with about maybe 30 people from residents. Yeah, there was no air conditioning. It was like 80 degrees. I was so impressed with the consultants who were able to pull it off in a very cool way. But and I think one of the biggest things that we learned in choosing a consultant is making sure that you choose a consultant that you know is going to be able to and is passionate about working with children and youth. And we also had some ideas, planning department, of how this should go. We had a very close relationship with the Detroit public school system. So we said, hey, we know how DPSCD potentially can be incorporated into this, but we also have a consultant who's got their own ideas as well, how to incorporate this. So the planning department at Detroit, working with a consultant like Hector, we were able to create a really robust initiative to engage youth in this planning process.
So maybe it's in the RFP, and maybe when you started undertaking the project, what were some of your goals for the plan when you were starting out?
I think the number one main goal is that we wanted the plan in some form or fashion to be led by youth. What we were lucky is once we hired our consultant, we were able to find, not able to find, there was a strong CDC, Community Development Corporation, that was already existing in the area called the Warrendale Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance. Kenyetta Campbell is their executive director. And it was through their initiative because they had something called the Youth Council, where they would tap in every year with the Cody High School and say, "Hey guys, we'd like to do some, fun projects in the neighborhood, some cleanup, some planting here, some doing this and doing that." So she had this whole youth council. And so what Hector and the planning department of Detroit said is, "Wow, let's tap into that. Let's pay youth to be involved, give them a stipend, and then let's just figure out a strategy to make sure that the youth council can work with us to kind of get this planning off the ground with additional input from the youth that were part of the school system." And so we had a very innovative process to kind of work with the school system as well.
Tell me more about that process. How
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting because when we hired Hector, we let them know that we got a youth council, we can work with them. Hector said, "Great." It's like, "Dave, what we want to do is let's tap into the youth council. Let's put out an invite to see how many kids want to be involved. Let them know we're going to pay them. And then they're going to be the constants throughout the entire process, which is about a year and a half." We said,
Yeah.
"Great." But then we said, in addition to that, the Detroit public school system would like to be involved in this process. So what we did is we had 5 schools, and so then the one of the executives at the Detroit public school system, her name is Alicia Merriweather, said, "You know what, Dave? Yes, you can work with our kids, but you're going to have to give a workshop with the principals to let them know what is planning and what you plan to do." And so then and when I say we, at that point, I had hired an intern from the University of Michigan who was a 5th grade school teacher in her past life. She went to the University of Michigan to get her master's degree in urban planning and public policy. And she was in her final kind of semester. And I put this not RFP yet, I put this request out looking for an intern to help me. And her name is Lindsay Baird. So she helped me. So Lindsay and I then crafted a workshop to figure out how to work with the DPSCD kids. And once again, I got an intern who used to work in that structure as a 5th grade school teacher. How to work with the principals, to do a workshop to let them know what we wanted to do, a structure of how we wanted to work with the students. And then after we gave that workshop to the principals said, "Okay, you can have access to our kids, and this is how we want you to do it." So each of the principals would allow us to get a class. The elementary schools, it was typically their 5th grade class, which they felt comfortable would be able to understand the content and give us the necessary input. And then the high school, we would get a class to really talk to them about it. And in each one of those classes, what we would do is prepare material to show them, to go over with them. And in that preparation, we'd always have a slideshow. We'd show the kids images, or we show them ideas what we'd want to do. But every time we did that, we would give them a report card. And the report card says, "Okay, we're going to talk about these 10 items. But then in your report card, you're going to tell us how we're progressing in item 1 or item 2. And so then the kids, these 5th graders and this high school kids, would have this report card. They'd look at they'd hear us talk about item 3. They'd look at the report card, and then they'd say, "Okay, give us a grade. A if we're doing well, and give us an F if this doesn't make any sense and you're frustrated about why we're even doing it." And so typically we never got any Fs, although some kids did give us some Fs. But in most cases, we got pretty decent grades from the kids. We got a bunch of A's and a bunch of B's, some C's where they were confused, or they didn't understand, or they felt like, "No, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing that?" So that was our process, working with the youth council, who had paid stipends, who were kind of like the shepherds of the plan, 8 kids there with the Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance, but then also going into the schools periodically, almost once every other month. So once every 2 months, going into the schools and going through this active process where we can show them where we are in the process and get their input by them giving us grades of how we're doing.
Well, that's very cool. The vibes in the chat are generally positive. If they were giving a report card right now, I think you're getting an A.
Yeah, the
But
fifth
don't.
graders are much harder than adults, guys. So if you're going to engage them, you got to make sure your voice, your images are clear. If you're proposing something, it's got to be clear. And then once you propose it, they're going to tell you why they like it and why they don't.
Yeah, well, very, very good advice. But folks listening, don't forget you can drop questions in chat. I do see a couple in there. We'll try to get to those later. But so what other kinds of types of you had these workshops? What other types of meetings did you have as part of
Oh,
the planning
oh yeah.
process?
What we did is we did a youth summit where we invited five of the schools, coordinated with the DPSCD, picked the kids up in a school bus, gave them lunch, and we had them for almost 3 hours. And what we did is did a number of different exercises and maps and breakout sessions in rooms, just talking to kids from grades third all the way through eighth grade. We had about maybe 150 kids in one of the schools and just went through this workshop. So that was one big thing. But in addition to that, we can't forget about the adults. So as part of this process, we had about maybe 6 or 8 adult community meetings and then a number of smaller discussions with adults. But then every time we would have a community meeting, we would always have a youth representative there.
Yeah.
And the youth representative would always kind of sit there and say, hey, we just wanted to let you know where we thought we were in the process. We've been working with Hector and the planning department of the city of Detroit. So always a youth representative every time we met with the adults, making sure that we stayed on track. So that's kind of the engagement that we did. We probably had over the year and a half about 100 meetings, and then large scale meetings, 8, smaller meetings with 1 or 2, 3 people or different types of stakeholders. There are probably maybe 60 of those, and then just meeting with the youth and talking to them. Probably met with the youth every week with their youth council, making sure that we are all coordinated there.
Very, very good. Yeah, I mean, just strikes me as like I haven't heard of too many youth-centric plans. Maybe touch on like maybe how unusual that might be, or maybe not unusual, but just like how important it was to maybe kind of attract people that might have been historically left out of a planning process.
Oh, it's one of the things for us is realizing one, it takes a tremendous amount of work. Typically, when we're doing our framework plans and working with community, the age group that attends our meeting is typically 55 to 85. That's just
Yeah.
a matter of fact. Those are the typical types of people who are attending our meetings. For us to get millennials in our meetings, to Gen Z in our meetings, or Generation Alpha in our meetings was not happening. And so this situation in Warrendale, Cody, Rouge, we actually forced Generation Alpha, which is that age group between 0 and 12, that actually, or 0 and 15, that actually came to our meeting and were helping us to run the meeting in some form or fashion. And that's unheard of in planning, where that age group, Generation Alpha and Gen Z, actually speak up and talk about what they want to see and what they like and what they don't like. So this is very unusual for us. We weren't able to see a model like this at any place else in the nation.
Mm,
And don't get me wrong, I think there's many cases where a planning department will reach out to kids and they'll have a few meetings with kids or a few
right.
this, but to actually have them involved in the entire process and leading the process in some cases, and then making sure that we got regular input from them of how we're progressing. And when I say them, meaning Generation Alpha and Gen Z, I think that was unusual. And I think that was good for us to see, but it was also an understanding that it was a lot of work. And if somebody says, well, we should do that for all the plans, it's like, wait, hold on here, guys. Um, it takes a lot of work to make sure that you're able to disseminate the information and to kind of break it down so they can understand it. But also takes a lot of work to understand their schedule and how to get to them. Um, and so it was very hard. It's something that we did for Warrendale Cody Rouge because it had the second highest population of youth in the city of Detroit, but we haven't done it for any other plans because of the understanding of how much work and coordination it really took to do it.
Very cool. Let's start talking about some of like the outcomes of this planning process. What were some of the goals of the plan at the end of the process?
So the goals are typically what we try to do is understand that all the major kind of elements that make us a neighborhood viable, we wanted to kind of touch on those. So housing, um, understanding what to do with vacant land, understanding open space initiatives and what type of open space we can have, understanding our commercial corridors and how we can make those a little bit more viable, both in a streetscape sense as well as in commercial redevelopment and helping existing business owners. So the plan was really all about kind of strengthening our parks, strengthening our commercial corridors for the neighborhood, strengthening our transportation, strengthening our open space, and strengthening the housing market throughout. Interestingly enough, because we are the planning department, we couldn't deal with education.
Hmm.
Um, and we always would tell people, it's like, although we have youth here, we're not trying to figure out how to improve education. That's just not in the purview of what we're really focused on the built environment and trying to make a better neighborhood and a stronger neighborhood for future growth. So we would let people know that in that discussion.
Um, very good. What were some kind of the near term and long term projects
Sure.
that the plan recommended?
Yeah. So if we just went into just start with streets and connectivity, I think some of the near term things that came out of that were the kids were telling us we want to be in a more beautiful corridor.
Hmm.
We want the buildings to look a bit nicer. We'd like to see a little bit more trees. We'd like the sidewalks. So we did a new streetscape on Warren. We got some new trees. We got some little places to sit. We got some murals that the kids got a chance to work on. And so then that's all built, and that was one of the short-term goals there. But also in addition to that, on that corridor, we had a lot of buildings that kind of looked that were vacant or they looked kind of like unsightly. And so we cleaned up some of these buildings and we have a facade program where we were able to give some grants to existing building owners and business owners and to say, hey, we want to beautify your facade. Let's get some awnings on it. If it needs paint, let's get some paint. If it needs some power washing on the masonry, let's do that. So really beautifying the corridor was probably one of the first steps in our initiative. And then now we were able to establish a West Warren Business Association, which now the building owners and business owners are starting to meet regularly and trying to help with this whole economic development initiative and getting more businesses open. When it comes to open space, we did one new park called Tyman Minnock Park because the kids said they love parks, which we get. But also, we're going to do a large scale park, which is going to be a skater park. Interestingly enough, the kids, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, love skater parks. And so then what we're doing is creating a large scale skater park in Simoneck Park. That hasn't started yet. We've just finished raising money for that. And so hopefully that's going to start in the next year or so. And then in housing, what we did is we had a program called Bridging Neighborhoods. And Bridging Neighborhoods, what we've been doing is getting a number of different neighborhoods, houses that are owned by the Detroit Land Bank Authority, rehabbing those houses and bringing in new homeowners. We've done about 18 in this neighborhood. We hope to do more. And so that's been a big initiative for housing. And now we also have a large scale affordable senior housing development that's going to happen. As part of this process, one of the things that we're very excited about is the Warrendale Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance, which is that nonprofit CDC that helped us get the kids because they have a youth council. They teamed up with a for-profit developer and they're doing their first development. And the first development is a 30-unit senior housing building, senior affordable senior building. And it's going to be right off of Warren. It's going to be right next to Simoneck Park, where our new skater park is going to be, and new baseball fields and new places to sit, new trees. But we're very excited about that. That housing, we're not only doing a rehab of existing housing, but we're also doing some new housing, especially for senior citizens. And in addition to that, some of the local nonprofit organizations, such as the Joy Southfield CDC and the Warrendale Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance, is also trying to help existing residents with some type of home repair program where they've been able to receive some large gifts from the nonprofit sector to do those programs. And then I guess last of all, housing, open space. streets. Yeah, those are the major initiatives for now, short term.
No, very cool. Um, you obviously nailed it. You got this APA Planning Excellence Award. Is it like a big trophy on your desk or something? I haven't seen it, but the what does it mean to you? Is there anybody you want to thank for you know your what there were a number of people that worked on the project.
Oh yeah. No, I think ultimately myself and then planning director Maurice Cox really came up with this idea, and then we didn't have any funding for it, and we couldn't find any funding for it. So then we sat down with then executive director of the Skillman Foundation, Tanya Allen, and said, Tanya, we need help. Can you help us raise money? Tanya then had this group that was General Motors, Quicken Loans, which is connected to Bedrock and Dan Gilbert, as well as um, General Motors, as well as DTE, which is the local utility company here. They banded together and they were able to give us the funding to do this plan. And so then that was good. So that's a huge shout out to all those organizations I just mentioned, Quicken, DTE, GM, and Skillman. And then in addition to that, as part of the implementation, Huntington Bank has signed up as our SNF partner. They committed to give almost $1 million every year for the next 5 years. And they've been just a huge help in kind of getting the implementation off the ground and making sure that we had the necessary dollars to do what we wanted to do. But then in addition to that, Lindsay Barrett, my intern slash project manager who helped me get this thing off, huge shout out to her. And then my project manager that came in probably 2-3 months as we were into this, Maddie Williams, was a huge help as well, kind of helping me get the plan through the process and through finish. All the different nonprofit sector entities that helped us, such as the Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance, such as Joyce Southfield CDC, and some of the other Islamic Center of Detroit was also a huge help, helped us get through this plan. And then just, lastly, Hector, Hector having the knowledge and the interest to work with this youth council and work with them like they were truly a right arm of their whole planning, private sector planning firm. That was just wonderful to see Hector work with these 8 or 9 kids over the 1.5-year process and then help us integrate them within the planning process. So all those guys should get a huge shout out because they were all critical components to kind of helping us get this thing done.
Well said. Before the orchestra plays us off at this award show, we do need to look at a couple questions from the chat. There's a couple questions about SNF. If you could remind our listeners what that means. I imagine it's not Sunday Night Football, but it's the questions are the SNF neighborhoods generally focused in the east side of Detroit, and how does a city even set up something like an SNF?
Oh, wow. So the SNF is a huge deal for us, Strategic Neighborhood Fund. And now, once again, if you Google Strategic Neighborhood Fund Detroit, you're going to get about 1,000 articles. So be careful. So it's been heavily publicized, but it's one of the greatest things that Mayor Duggan has put into place where the private sector and the public sector are working together, raising funds to kind of help implement specifically neighborhood development, stuff outside of the 7.2 of downtown, really kind of helping neighborhoods. And the reason why that gets started is because one, we were able to get a bond to do the roads and to do a lot of our streetscapes, but we are also able to talk to the corporations and philanthropy, places like Invest Detroit and Huntington Bank and Penske and Blue Cross Blue Shield and Flagstar and all these different types of organizations that basically said, hey, we're willing to commit some dollars to this. And in some cases, like Kresge, almost $10 million to this initiative, and Invest Detroit a large amount as well. And then eventually we were able to raise almost $120 million, $60 million from the private and philanthropy sector, and then another almost $60 million from the federal government through our bonding initiative and some help from MISHDA from the state. So the Strategic Neighborhood Fund is spread out through both the west side, the east side, and the north side. It incorporates 12 different areas, which incorporates almost 71 different neighborhoods, with a population of probably, I want to say almost 300, 400,000 people have been affected by the Strategic Neighborhood Fund area effort. If you Google it, there's tons of information. I could speak on 2 hours on just the Strategic Neighborhood Fund area for the city of Detroit. The interesting thing is, as we're going through implementation, because a lot of times the S&F framework plans take about 1.5 years to complete. Once you're done with the plan, you have to go through this implementation. Implementation is probably 5 or 6 years. So a lot of the plans that we've done, we're only just now going into implementation and getting things done. But the interesting thing is what we're noticing is all of these S&F areas that we have chosen and that we're doing investment, a lot of them, if you look at it, have almost $100 million of public and private investment that are happening in or around within 1 or 2 mile radius of the S&F areas. And it's just an amazing story of how once you can show people a plan, then all types of things happen, both in the private sector, both in the public sector. Utility companies start doing underground work. You've got private developers who start coming in. You've got new schools happening. In Warrendale, Cody, Rouge, they're in the process. Their board approved about 2 years ago, after we did the plan, that they were going to do a new school. So a new $75 million high school is going to be coming to that Warrendale, Cody, Rouge area. And so those are the type of things. And in addition to that, the KIPP school in that same area is going to be putting up a new $30 million school. Those are things that we never planned for. Never knew that was not planned for. Never knew that it was going to happen. But because they saw a plan that was kid-led, that all these other things are starting to happen. So that's almost $100 million in just new school. That's going to be happening just in that Warrendale, Cody, Rouge Strategic Neighborhood Fund area. But there's also tons of other things that have happened there as it relates to utility infrastructure improvements and as it relates to new streets and paving. And it's just a wonderful story that if we all work together, all the departments can work together and be focused and get something done, put a plan in place, and make sure that they, every year that when they do their budget, they have a little piece in there for each one of these areas. Then the private sector and the public sector start saying, hey, we want to play with you. We see what's happening. We want to invest in these neighborhoods. And that's exactly what's starting to happen.
Well, we got in 1 minute. Can you give me your final piece of advice for folks undertaking a plan like this? And if you could be our traditional closing question, if you could be the GovLove DJ, what song would you pick as the exit music for this episode?
My exit music would be "We Are Family." So that's the one I would pick.
Nice.
And then I think my final advice is that you can't do it alone. So no planning department can do it alone. And you have to have a nonprofit community development corporation that's working with you. Step one. We actually had 3 or 4 that worked with us. Step 2, you have to hire a consultant who's really going to work with you, not going to just work and then tell you what it is. So finding a good consultant and then making sure that you have partners that surround you. We were lucky enough to have all of these entities, like I said, Quicken and Huntington Bank and a GM and DTE Foundation and Skillman that really worked with us. We would give them updates of how this was going. And then in this area, ultimately the kids and the DPS CD public school system, allowing us to go in there, work with their kids, just an amazing opportunity. But the goal is that it is just a family. And at a certain point, nothing gets done if you try to do it alone. And you want to incorporate as many of the systems that are in place in the neighborhood to work together. And then once that happens, then you have a neighborhood that's probably going to have over $200 million worth of investment over the next 5 to 6 years. So that would be my final thing that I tell everybody. If you can figure out a way to work together, then we are family.
Well said, Dave. That ends our episode for today. Thanks to everyone for joining me online at the 2024 National Planning Conference. GovLove is produced by a rotating cast of ELGL volunteers. ELGL is the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. You can reach us at elgl.org/GovLove or on LinkedIn at GovLove Podcast. Thanks for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government. Bye.
Just be